And I think that's why it's important to always, whatever you choose, whether it's, getting, a therapist or a coach or a hypnotherapist or a healer, like just getting someone to kind of help you uncover what's in there, whether that's in the thoughts brain or whether it's deeper within your body or the unconscious part of you. It's important to work through that because, as you said, all of these things are blind spots. So I don't know how many times I've gone through a session with the client and they think that they come to me with this problem here. But when we actually solve the problem, it has really nothing to do with this. But the only thing it has to do with this is that it's not allowing you to move forward in that area. But it's usually something deeper within. It could have happened, when you were a young child. It could have happened within a previous relationship, or it could be something that, like I said, you've built onto because your family passed it on to you. Like a lot of our beliefs and the way that we act are just things that we've been taught. And again, a lot of those things are unconsciously taught because as children, people don't necessarily, the thing that children learn from most is visual, not from, verbal. Welcome to the Queer Quest podcast, your beacon of light and sprinkle of glitter in the queer community. I'm your host, Cristiano Green, CEO and founder of Queer Quest and a transformation coach for queer individuals. And together, we are embarking on a journey of transformation. Each week, we bring you a new training topic or connecting with visionary queer leaders in healing and coaching, diving deep into conversations that inspire growth, celebrate diversity, and empower you to live authentically. So wherever you are, settle in and let's get ready to unlock the vibrant potential within. This is where your quest begins. Hello, all you fabulous souls, and welcome to another episode of the Queer Quest podcast. I'm your host, Cristiano Green, the CEO and founder of Queer Quest, and a transformation coach for people in the queer community. But enough about me. We have a special guest in the house today, another legendary member of the queer community. We've got Liv Hiam, who is a somatic hypnotherapist for people in the queer community. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Liv.
Thanks for having me, Cristiano. It's lovely
Yes,
to meet you.
yeah, lovely to meet you too. And, I know, like I said, I think we were just quickly talking before about, you're a somatic hypnotherapist. And I know what that means, but I bet you there's so many people out there who really don't understand that. So I'd love for you to maybe quickly introduce yourself and what, a somatic hypnotherapist is.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And a lot of people do ask me that. So basically, hypnotherapy is a form of therapy that is considered alternative,
Mm,
where at the difference of talk therapy, where you do work a lot with the rational and conscious mind, so there's a lot of talking, it's very logic. You're analyzing and trying to figure out things in life, patterns and stuff like that. With hypnotherapy, you're now working with the subconscious mind. So in a session, I will be a bit having that logical conversation at the beginning, where I will be actually using neurolinguistic programming, which helps me to understand the core issue of people that is
mm,
usually unconscious, that usually
yep.
lives at the level of the subconscious or the body. And then I usually guide people into a state of altered consciousness, which is known as hypnosis, but can also be understood as shavasana in yoga or meditation. um,
Mm,
and the somatic aspect is very important to me because in the last 20 years in the field of psychology, it's been proven how most of our traumas, most of our emotional wounds from the past are actually stored within the body.
yeah.
And what's very beautiful and healing, whether it's used with the hypnosis modality or another modality, is you quickly realize that the emotion is stored within the subconscious, and the subconscious is completely intertwined with the body. So within sessions, I give suggestions to the emotional body to release. And so that can show up as twitches, that can show up as like muscle kind of releasing. It can be the breath really changing. And so that's why my take on hypnotherapy is really working specifically with the body.
I love that because yeah, like we as human beings, we're made up of a lot of energy, and when we talk about the emotions getting stored, basically that's trapped energy stored into the body that's come in the form of, like I said, a trauma or a negative energetic emotional experience. And so being able to work with the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, however, people want to hear that, is a great way to release that, because as we both, understand that our nervous systems can be the thing that really cause us the biggest amount of physical trouble in ourselves. And so learning how to regulate your nervous system, regulate your emotions, sort out that energy, it's a great way for you to be able to move forward. And so again, you work with a lot of people in the queer community. So
Yep.
talk about how this would be helpful for people in the queer community. Like why do some of your clients come to you generally?
Yeah. Well, we started talking about it at the beginning of this call, where I've usually found that within the queer community, there is a tendency to dissociate. And so not be in touch with their nervous system, have a nervous system that's very dysregulated. And so that in turn leads to um, just creating more trauma in life.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting with the concept of trauma too, and I don't know if that's something that people who will listen know about it, but I kind of want to already explain the difference between little t trauma and big T trauma, where a lot of people they're not sure if they want to do, like a supporting journey with someone, whether it's a therapist, a coach, things like that, because they're like, well, I've never actually experienced trauma before.
Yeah.
To which I reply, usually, if you're human in a human body, then you have experienced trauma. Unless you're a completely enlightened master or monk, then you have experienced trauma. And so, what actually happens is that a lot of people um, might actually have experienced an experience where their nervous system, their survival part of their brain, which lives at the level of the subconscious, when they've had an experience in front of them, had a reaction, had a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, which that on itself then created a little T trauma, unless it was processed on the moment, unless the body knew how to regulate and knew how to feel safe again. And so that can literally be when you're 5 year old and you're in the supermarket with your parents and they change alley, and then all of a sudden you're just like, where is my parent? They're gone. And
Mm.
for a kid of that age, when the parent is their main reason for survival, they're then lost. They have this sense of I might die, literally. That's on itself a little T trauma. And so to come back to the question about the queer like community and people itself, it's very interesting that for the queer community, there might be people who've experienced big T trauma of childhood because um, people haven't been accepting, family rejecting them, having lost certain very important loved ones because of their true self.
Being bullied
Or
and all of that as well, right?
yeah, and then it can be the accumulation of a lot of little T traumas. And
Yeah.
that can be all the moments they were rejecting the possibility to live their truth from a very young age. So playing the way they wanted to play, with who they wanted to play, how they wanted to play, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then it continues. It's all the moments, even in high school, like adulthood, where they might have wanted to do something that was very resonating with their authentic queer self, but because of unconscious programmings of society, of religion, of culture, of no, you can't be queer, right?
Their family dynamics as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That has created then an accumulation of micro T traumas. And it can also be, the okay, I'm now choosing to be myself, to show myself to the world. And then there's a reality of you live in a society and then you might, get arrested. You might have like people looking at you, say things at you. And again, that becomes then what we now know as like microaggressions. And that for the queer community can just tunnel and be a lot, which can lead to a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of sadness, chronic depression,
Fear,
anxieties, panic
doubts within
attacks. Like,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah. And obviously also unhealthy coping mechanisms. That's another thing hypnotherapy can really help is just,
Drinking,
detaching.
drugs, partying,
Yes.
avoiding. sex, that is, unhealthy, things like that. Yeah, definitely. We all probably can think out there, there's something that we've done in our life to cope in an unhealthy way, right? It's like people often tend to try to avoid, things or numb themselves from things, right? That's people's normal coping strategies to, deal with some of these traumas or the triggers that come that cause, the stuff within our body to cause an emotional release, or, us to have some, like I said, our nervous system be dysregulated, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And so that's where it's very interesting because when people come to me and they might be in a situation where, oh, I want to stop that, for example, toxic pattern or that toxic coping mechanism, the first thing is we're not going to shame that. We're going to actually invite that part, that archetype of the person who at some point decided that that would be the best solution, that would be the best coping mechanism. And instead of being like, okay, we hate this, no, gotta stop it, it's actually like, okay, we're going to thank that part of you. And I do a lot of parts integration. We're going to thank that part of you who at one point in the past was the best solution for you. Now we're going to ask it to actually upgrade because you're all ready for that growth. And so we're going to ask that same part how it can change, how it's ready to serve you better. And so it's basically rewiring at that same like level, at that same core, and not shaming, but actually creating more forgiveness, more love, and more acceptance for ourselves and in the whole, in our whole. So yeah.
Totally. And for some of you people who out there who are talking, wondering what parts integration is, it's really, oftentimes we can have conflicts within ourselves, right? It might be that I am really looking for love and trying to find a partner, but there's a part of me that doesn't feel deserving of love. And so the parts within ourselves are conflicting and causing us to probably not be able to get what we want, which is probably to find a partner, because there's a part of us that doesn't feel deserving. So when we integrate the parts, we basically figure out why there's a part of you that feels that you're not good enough. And we talk to that part. So we get to the same higher purpose, which is, I just want to be loved. And maybe there's a part of me that hasn't felt loved. And we really try to work together internally so that you can love both parts of yourself and then ultimately get the kind of result that you're looking for. And so I believe what Liv does with hypnotherapy is talk to those parts which are more of the subconscious and the unconscious parts within ourselves, so that we resolve the conflicts internally and ultimately externally get the kind of results or goals that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you said it. You explained it really well. That's it. And what's very interesting when I have been someone in that state of being more relaxed, right? Of being actually in a state where the parasympathetic nervous system is like it's in the parasympathetic uh, state. So that means it's in rest digest, it's regulated, it's feeling safe. That's when actually you can also then go in much deeper layers. Where, for example, if I continue to explain the parts integration, at the beginning when we start the session and we're still at the conscious rational level of
Mm.
talking of like, okay, what's going on, okay, you want a new relationship, but then you have that like, thoughts or limiting belief that, oh, I don't deserve this, or I'm not worth it, oh, I don't love myself, like those unconscious limiting beliefs that are driving the life of the person. What happens next is when we go into hypnosis and we start a bit digging at those level, what's usually very, very beautiful and profound is we realize, oh wow, there are other aspects that are actually much deeper, like that can be usually more vulnerable, more wounded. It could be inner child, it could be just parts of like, whoa, I'm just really sad. I'm just really scared. There's a part of me that used to protect me. And so, what's really beautiful with working with the subconscious is we start a session somewhere and we think it might go somewhere, but it's actually can be thought through. And it's really about how the body will respond and how at that level the emotional side of people will respond to. And sometimes that work will happen through still verbal communication, but what's really beautiful with hypnosis is there's actually a lot of ways to still communicate with the subconscious that are non-verbal. So it could
Mm.
be having ways where the body is going to respond to certain sets of questions I ask, or it can literally be through written communication sometimes, where the conscious mind is not fully aware of what's happening. But it can also be more subtle ways where I'm observing and the body will give very clear answers on certain things I'm gonna say. Or if there's a resistance, the body will, like, for example, give a twitch on I love myself, and then I will just test it again and see. And that's something a person themselves may never be able to figure it out, because I then act more as like a reflection, a mirror, and I
Yeah.
will be able to see blind spots that people don't see because it lives in their unconscious. So,
Totally. And I think that's why it's important to always, whatever you choose, whether it's, getting, a therapist or a coach or a hypnotherapist or a healer, like just getting someone to kind of help you uncover what's in there, whether that's in the thoughts brain or whether it's deeper within your body or the unconscious part of you. It's important to work through that because as you said, all of these things are blind spots. So I don't know how many times I've gone through a session with the client and they think that they come to me with this problem here. But when we actually solve the problem, it has really nothing to do with this. But the only thing it has to do with this is that it's not allowing you to move forward in that area. But it's usually something deeper within. It could have happened, when you were a young child. It could happen within a previous relationship, or it could be something that, like I said, you've built onto because your family passed it on to you. Like a lot of our beliefs and the way that we act are just things that we've been taught. And again, a lot of those things are unconsciously taught because as children, people don't necessarily the thing that children learn from most is visual, not from verbal. It's watching people and how people act and seeing people's facial impressions. And so if you're a child and you take on something and you put a meaning to something that happened with your parents when you were 2 years old, but in fact that actually never happened, but it did happen within you. And so it's how do I uncover those things to resolve that so that I can actually move forward and maybe, like I said, get the result that I'm looking for, whether it's finding a partner, whether it's moving forward in my career, whether it's just like finding like what my passion is. So many things that people come to us for. But like I said, it's usually this is what you want, but the thing that you think is blocking you from it is usually never anywhere near what we
yeah.
have.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a one of my mentor who says actually he has like three rules, and one of them is it's never about what it is about.
Mm,
Like whatever we think like, oh, I'm sad because of X happened. No, actually it really likely isn't. It maybe has triggered a wound that already existed from the past, from childhood, from, you heard something when you were 6 about, oh, when you wear that kind of thing, or when if you love that person, this is gonna happen. And
totally,
at the moment you didn't remember that it would impact you. And then fast forward 20 years later, it actually still lives within you, but you don't know that it was there.
totally.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
Totally. And this is why this kind of work is so important for people in the queer community because we grew up in a world, in society, in families even that didn't accept us. And so we have learned from a young age many different things that we've seen unconsciously where they're saying who you are or who you love or, how you feel about yourself, is wrong. And so if you've heard that once, twice, 20, 30, 500 times in your life, that builds up a lot of different traumas within your body, which also teaches you to, I can't trust anybody. I can't speak to anybody. Everyone's, out to get me. Like all of these different beliefs come up. And so as someone who works with people in the queer community, people who say I don't have traumas, they just don't understand sometimes what traumas are. So I guess I would love for you to understand for someone who's struggling to come to terms with like the fact that I might have gone through trauma, how do they show up in people's lives that you would normally see for people that, like I said, that come to you?
Yeah, yeah. Oof, there's a lot of ways.
So many ways, right? So it's a
Yeah.
big question.
Yeah, it is a big question, but it's a really good question. I think a lot of times when people do come to see me, there's a different version of it. There's people who've gone through the route of, oh, I've done years of psychotherapy, for example,
Yeah,
and it's great and it's helped me analyze a lot of things, and yet I can see the same patterns are still showing up. And so a way that traumas can then continue to show up is having still Sorry. Get a bit of water.
Okay.
Where there's really just certain patterns and behaviors who keep coming back, where there might be still triggers who come. So people who have anxiety, unexplained panic attacks, night terrors, um, people who are having pains in their body, certain chronic health, fatigue, things like that. Those are very somatic ways of knowing there's still trauma stuck in the body.
Yeah.
Um, there's also just the general thing of this one is quite a funny one
A
where
physical reaction when something happens as well, right? So, like,
yeah,
you might get triggered every time you see a certain kind of person, and you don't know why you
yeah,
think that way, but that will be a trigger because of
yeah,
a trauma for what it is. Maybe because that person reminds you of someone who maybe hurt you in the past or whatever it is, right? Or
yeah,
energetically, it might just be the energy that they carry themselves reminds you of someone who's, like I said, hurt you or done something to you, right? And someone calling you gay when you were 5 years old can be a very traumatic experience for people, right? And so this is what I'm saying is like the smallest things that you might think, oh God, like that was nothing, can actually hold a big monumental thing in your life. And again, you
yeah,
may have forgotten that, but all these other things can compound that, which is why I believe in the queer community. Rejection is such a deep-seated, difficult emotion for people to deal with because there's been so much in our life where we've had to deal with rejection, sometimes consciously and a lot of it unconsciously. And so sometimes the thought of putting yourself out there to date with someone is difficult because you're like, I don't want to open myself up to the rejection because compoundingly, if you just had one rejection, the next one wouldn't be as hard. But if you've had, say, 50, 60, 70 little rejections in your life and you haven't learned to process those, they're all stored in the body. That one thing, which becomes a trigger, relates to the trauma of all those other things that have happened to you in your life as well.
yeah. And then we move into like even the aspect of self-rejection, where because we might have perceived rejection happening a lot of the times before we reach a moment where, okay, this is what's going to happen. So we just self-reject ourselves. And
Yeah.
for the queer community, that really shows up in like, oh, I'm not going to go to this queer event, or like, oh, I'm not going to put myself into, the queer like dating life and things like that. And it's like even the level of like internalized shame that there might have been and rejection can also even lead to, oh well, no, I won't ask for people to use the correct pronouns. I feel weird about this. Oh, they, dead name me, they use the wrong name. Oh well, that's okay. And then you reach into a level of what I call self-rejection, then where inside of you there might be then a trigger, an emotional reaction to a situation. But instead of then voicing yourself and stepping into your power and being like, okay, no, this is my truth. I'm, you know, advocating for my truth, for my rights, then there's a self-rejection where like, oh well, this has never happened before. I used to not deserve this. And then it goes into self-rejection, which then can spiral down quite a lot for people and can be very isolating on that sense too, especially for the queer community. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. You got into somatic hypnotherapy for a reason. So I'd love, because people love to hear about people's own personal journeys. What was it like for you, Liv, growing up as a little queer person, and what got you into kind of, like I said, the field that you're in now?
Yeah, well, actually, I was like an expat child, so I moved a lot around the world, and I think the world of queerness was just not my reality.
Mm.
I did have like an aunt who, when I was young, was with a woman, but when we were young, all of our family was telling us that they were just friends, and they were actually asked not to display affection in front of us because we were too young to understand. So that at that level, which I didn't understand back then,
Of
and it
course.
took me years to understand, but that led to internalized shame and internalized like, well, you can't be a lesbian, like you can't love women. That's just not possible. You gotta hide it.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
stored so deeply. I've been in a relationship with men for most of my life, and I was having a lot of issues. So um chronic depression, panic attacks, anxiety, what I was sharing about. And I was with men, but I was having a lot of issues intimately, sexually. There was a lot of aspects that were just not working for me. And I kept looking for the fix, the heal. So I did
Mm,
psychotherapy, I started traveling again. And it's actually through spirituality that I started to learn, okay, I'm just going to learn to sit with myself, to be with myself. And I did a program that included meditation, that included cacao ceremonies, included somatic work and hypnotherapy. And it's only then that I started to get like understandings from my subconscious. You like woman. You're in pain because you're not living that truth. Oh
mm,
my God. I'm having goosebumps, but like it exploded completely the possibilities of life. And I just could finally, from there, do all the work to kind of like let go of those internalized limiting belief system, let go of that internalized trauma from childhood, and actually start to build my confidence, start exploring and living in my state of love and of truth. And so it changed my life so much that
yeah.
after I did that year long of meditation, hypnotherapy, and all of that, my mentor, the person who was actually my therapist, was like, "Hey, I'm starting an academy to, teach people to use those tools to help others to make a bigger impact. And would you like to join?" And I was like, I didn't think once. I was like, okay, I'm packing my bags and I moved to Guatemala because that
Wow.
academy was in Guatemala. And so I trained under him to really learn all the skills, whether that is very like Western world medicine, traditional like psychology, things like that, but also then the very Eastern basis of the importance of spirituality. And he would joke how he said, "You're gonna learn from me, and then at the end of all this academy, all this program, when you're gonna come back to your, homes or family and things, and they're gonna ask you, so what did you learn?" You'll say you've learned nothing. Why? Because you will realize that what will most impact someone's life is just you being 100% present and loving of them. And that's not something you really learn. You just are. And so it's just a remembrance. And so that's also
Returning to who you truly are. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's also like a main value I have with anyone who chooses to work with me is knowing like when you choose to do that, I'm just a mirror to show you like you already have all the resources within you. My point is not that you need me. I don't want you to need me. I am not your healer. I'm not gonna do a lot of work actually. Biggest work is gonna be coming from you because it takes courage to face yourself fully. And I'm just going to be a witness of your own growth. And I'm just going to love you. I'm going to love the shit out of every person who I work with because it's an honor to see people to just come back to their home, to their true self. Yeah.
I love that. And I often say that, I don't do much of the work. I just guide you to where you need to be. And that's right in front of yourself,
Yeah.
guide you
Yeah.
with the right question, maybe that helps you to figure it out. I'm not here to give you the answers because me giving you the answers isn't going to help you, right? You're uncovering
Yeah.
it for yourself and really seeing your truth in your words, not mine, is going to allow you to truly get what you need out of this, right? Because, if everyone could just walk up to someone and get all the answers they needed, like would that would that actually be as meaningful as you figuring it out for yourself, right? The reason why it's important for you is because you've been able to get to that point on your own as well. Yes, you might have had
Yeah.
some help, support, people in front of you, but you got there, you did the work. So you're your own healer, you're your own guide,
Yeah.
you know. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mm.
like, yeah. I love it. And it's so beautiful to like see people just like come to their own understanding by themselves where maybe it's in one session, maybe it takes multiple sessions, but then there's just that one thing that clicks and then poof, you just see it like the light comes back and it's just like, oh whoa. And then the shift happens and then it's just a matter of like, okay, how can you continue to live in that shift and actually have also things you can have with you moving past our sessions, past that. So I do a lot of also just how are you breathing? Most people don't know how to breathe. So, okay, learning how to breathe in a coherent, regulated way, which is actually quite simple. It's just a matter of like, for any change to become a habit, an automatic response, first you need to make it conscious before it can becomes unconscious. So
Totally.
there's like again that loop of okay, how can you make something real? So it could be the breathing. It can literally be like learning how to come back into the body. How do you sense yourself? Like how can you usually the body is it's very smart. It will give the hints of, oh, this is a trigger. This is still something I want to work on. And a lot of times when people also ask me, through social media, like, oh, but how do I even start my healing? How like, yeah, maybe I can understand I might have trauma. And again, there can be some confusion there, but like how do I then move past that? And it's like, well, it's very easy. It doesn't have to be hard. Okay, just look at this last week. What areas in your life, what conversation, what activity did you do that brought a form of emotional sensation, a physiological change, right? Heart change, you start sweat, things like that. And that is where you will start. It's as easy as that. So it's actually very accessible. Healing is very accessible to all of us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is accessible, and most people know what it is that they where they really need to start. They're just looking for permission to go there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
Liv, before we leave today, of course, like I said, we have a lot of people in the queer community listening here, and you've gone through your own journey and you've helped many people in the queer community. If there was one message you could leave people in the queer community that you would love for them to take away from ever hearing about you, seeing you, or knowing anything about you, what would be the one message that you would love for queer people to be able to take away and understand and maybe for them to ponder on?
Yeah. Um, what's coming up is learning to sit with your truth, and especially for the queer community where they might have gone through a journey where they've been told they can't be or they can't do something. It's so important to learn to come back home to you because you have all the answers within yourself. And how can you learn to love all that you are? And that will in turn bring so much more love, so much just the right people into your life too. You might lose a lot of the people that you thought were important, and this might be hard. But if you always come back to yourself and you believe truly in your truth, oh my God, it's gonna get really, really, really beautiful. So that's yeah, that's a message I'm feeling like passing to the people who are listening to us today.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that because it is all about love. And when you can learn to kind of, work through some of the shadows or the dark things or the hard things within yourself and, replace that with compassion and love for yourself, then the world around you does change, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, it's important, similar to what you said that your mentor said to you, right? Me being here, me being present, and me loving on you is all you really ever need from me because, it shows within you that you are also love as well. That's at the core of who we all really are.
We're moving into the like very sparkly love and light
Yeah, well,
circle.
it's a nice place to end the conversation. Well,
Yeah.
I want to thank you and acknowledge you for coming on here today, Liv. It's been a pleasure getting to know more about your journey and your experiences, and I trust the people listening are getting a lot of value as well. For anyone out there who wants to, connect with you more, how can people find you, Liv? What is anything coming up that you've got going on?
Well, thanks for anyone who's been listening. I do offer one-on-one sessions with people, so hypnotherapy work. Currently, I mostly like to work with people on 3 months commitment journeys, just because we just can go so much deeper, really build something strong. And that's when we can really see we can go past such deeper resistant limiting beliefs and things like that. So you can find more information on my website, which is queerandconscious.com, and or you can also follow me on Instagram, which is my name and last name, so at liv, Livhiam, Liv Hiam. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
And I'll link the
thank you so
the
much.
website below. So if anyone's listening right now, it's going to be in the comments below.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you again to everyone who's listened. It was such a pleasure. So
Yeah, such a
lovely.
pleasure, such an honor. It's a great space to end it. I'm feeling fantastic. I hope everyone out there's feeling fantastic as well. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Queer Quest podcast. But until then, always remember that you've got this and I've got you. Bye for now.